council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. Excuse me. My name is John Blatherwick, and I'll be chairing this hearing today. With me are my fellow panel members, Bonnie Oak Charon, Stan Wilder, Heather McLean, and Michael Wildman. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development of the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances: noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, additional variances without proper public notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. And at this time, we have 3 stat decks that are confirmed. The rest of them haven't, so I will have to administer the oath to applicants and or owners as we deal with your application. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee, and the date to be confirmed with the coordinator. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to this hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where additional clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Start with stating your name and municipal address for the record. We also may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will have to be at the discretion of the committee. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision, and to all parties and those who have requested it, a written decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, during which the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. So before we begin the agenda, are there any declarations of interest on today's agenda, either panel 1, panel 2, or panel 3?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I do have an interest to declare on item 1. The agent for the owners undertook a construction project for me, which is now complete. However, that work is still under warranty. So therefore, I will not be participating in any of the discussion or decision-making on item number 1.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wildman. Anybody else? Hearing none. We have no minutes to confirm, but we do have, before we get to the main agenda, a number of adjournment requests. The first adjournment request is for item number 569 McLeod, and this request was made by the planning department. If they would like to articulate their request.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the department requests an adjournment on this application due to the fact that first the application should go through site plan control, As of right now, it's a 3-dwelling unit, but they're looking to convert it into a 4-dwelling unit, which would trigger site plan control, and it's department's position that site plan control application be on their way or it be nearly completed before the minor variances are contemplated.
Okay. Do we have Mr. Wright speak to this? Your position on the adjournment request from the department, Mr. Wright? Is Mr. Wright there? I see his name on my screen, but not a microphone. And he's not there at all anymore. Oh. Mr. Wright, are you there? Let's step this down for a moment, and we'll deal with the other applications for adjournment and get back to number 5. The second adjournment request as well from the planning department is for items number 9 and 10, and they are applications dealing with 182/184 Clare Street. So if the department would like to articulate their request for adjournment.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We requested adjournment on account of the applicant having missed several variances that would be required, and just a general sense that they would benefit greatly from additional consultation with city staff.
And I take it you've discussed that the applicant is in favor?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am.
And who are you, sir?
Isaac Saramkar.
Okay.
Sorry, my webcam seems to not be working otherwise.
All right. This adjournment, or the comments from planning indicate that it will probably take a little time to get these issues revised and straightened out before it comes back to us. So I think it's probably best to, and it's going to have to be recirculated anyway. It's best to have this adjourned sine die.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair, we agree. We believe it will have to be recirculated, and there's a couple of variances we might have to be taking off and make some changes. We were asking for a 4-week adjournment, if that's possible.
I think you'd probably be best off to do a sine die. You can.
Oh, sine die. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. All in favor? All in favor of adjourning this application sine die? Right. The application is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There was also a possibility that items 14 and 15, 241 Furland Street, would be up for an adjournment request. I don't have it on my official list, but if Mr. Bede is there. Right. Obviously, Mr. Bede hasn't logged on, so we'll have to deal with this item in the.
Hello, Mr. Chair. This is Tim Bede from POTEN.
Mr. Bede.
Thank you. Sorry, it takes a little while to get everything up and rolling.
All right, we're aware of the fact that you may be requesting an adjournment on this item.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We'd like to request a adjournment for an additional 2 weeks. As you know, we were previously at committee to discuss the minor variances and consent application for 21 Furland, and concerns or issues were raised regarding Hydro Ottawa clearance guidelines. We've made progress with those discussions in terms of our building design and their proximity to Hydro Ottawa infrastructure. However, we believe that an additional 2 weeks will benefit all parties in terms of finalizing those discussions and coming to a design and a solution that fits for both parties. We've also retained additional legal counsel for this matter that we believe will significantly assist in working through these issues.
Okay. Secretary Treasurer, what can we do as far as this one's concerned? Mr. Bede's asking for 2 weeks. I don't know. I think the applications are pretty full up the next couple of weeks.
That's right, Mr. Chair. The next available date for a hearing on this matter would be November 4.
Okay.
You've heard it from the Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Bede.
I suppose if that's the next available opportunity to come back to committee, that works on our end. Obviously, we'd like to have our case heard as soon as possible, but that makes sense to me, and that works on our end, I believe.
Okay. Well, what we can do is adjourn to November the 4th. All in favor of adjourning this application until the 4th of November? Yeah, okay. It's adjourned until the 4th of November. Thank you, Mr. Bede.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
To get back to item 5 on the adjournment request from the department is Mr. Wright there at the moment? Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright, we don't have a video or an audio for you. What's the phone number that Mr. Wright can use to get into us with a landline? Thinking what he's probably going to have to do.
It would have been sent with the original invitation, because he will need also the web ID and the passcode as well. I can resend it to him though.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, and we'll just we'll step this down and get on to the main agenda. Thanks very much. First item on the main agenda is item 1. Mr. Wildman will not be participating. 509 Windermere. This is an application to permit a reduced northerly interior side yard setback and to permit eaves to be located closer to the northerly lot line. It is proposed to demolish the existing detached garage and to construct a 2-story addition on the north side of the existing 2-story detached dwelling. And the applicant for this is Mr. Mulholland. Is he there? Mulholland is apparently not there. So we'll step this application down. Next item on the agenda is item number 2, 36 Fentimore. And this is a minor variance to permit an increase in gross floor area. It is proposed to construct a 1-story addition onto the existing dwelling. And the agent is there, Mr. Lalonde, I believe. Can't hear you, Mr. Lalone. You have to turn on your audio.
Okay, I'm Glenn Bousted. I know I'm not on your list, but I'm the owner.
What's your name, sir, again?
My name is Glenn Bousted.
Okay. All right, I've got you here. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to have to administer the oath to you since the sign was not put up. Where's my list? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do. Yes, it was.
Right. Thank you. If you'd like to give us a brief explanation of your application, Mr. Bousted.
Okay. Basically, we'd like to improve the livability of our home, and so we want to add a dining room and increase the excuse me, size of the existing 2 bedrooms,
Okay.
as stated on the application. So I'm here to, if you have any questions about it, I could be happy to answer. Oh, Mr. Lalonde is there as well.
Right.
Any questions?
Do you have any elevations you can show us?
Yeah, there's elevations.
Like plan. The Rideau Valley Conservation Authority seems to be in agreement with you with your application.
Yes, we
Have you
consulted with.
received, if you understand, you have to receive written permission from them before you can proceed with your building permit.
Yes, that's understood.
All right. But if you can give us some idea of the location of the property and what you intend to do.
Sure. If I get the coordinator puts the slides. Okay, sure. I don't have any ability to do that, right? So, yeah. So that's that. You can keep going through the. Please, thank you. These are just the consultations that we did. So you've got all of that, and then stop at the picture. So there we are. So there's our neighborhood. I have the across the street view, and then the view of our home. Ours is the white bungalow there that you can see.
Yeah.
We have a new build on one side and another house on the other side.
Okay.
The next slide that shows the house from front and back. So we're keeping the same style. We just want to extend the back of the home and out to the side a little bit. So the next slide, let's see what that shows. That one shows the elevations.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to go back to, did you have any questions about the elevations yet?
So you're not extending your basement, therefore.
That's exactly right. Yes, we're not extending the basement at all. We're not touching the foundation. Just going out on piers.
Okay.
To the back. Yeah.
All right.
And then the next step is floor plans of what we intend to do. And there's the site plan. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And as I mentioned, the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority is in agreement with your application.
Yeah, he came to the site and visited the site before.
Okay. You're aware that Forestry Services is requiring you to provide them with a disclosure report?
Yes, I am aware of that. I spoke with the gentleman who came to the house.
Okay. Any questions from the panel regarding this application? Are we prepared to grant the application as presented? All in favor of the application being granted? All right. All right, your application is granted. Good luck with your project.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Stay dry.
Yeah, it's just continuing here. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Next application on the agenda is item number 3, 233 4th Avenue. This is a minor variance to permit reduced interior side yard, corner side yard, and rear yard setbacks. Proposed to construct an addition to the existing basement that will extend to the rear of the property. And I believe Mr. Ritzy is the agent for the applicant.
Mr. Chair, we will require a statutory declaration on this application.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The owner is here and he was administering the sign, so he's prepared to give you his oath.
All right. All right. Is it?
That's the,
Ms. All right. Is it Ms. or Miss or Mr. Deutsch?
it's Mr.
Okay, Mr. Deutsch, are you online?
Yes, I am.
All right, I'm going to administer the oath. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
I do. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deutsch. All right, Mr. Ritzy, if you would give us a brief explanation of what you're requesting.
Yes, I'll just initially talk about the current context.
Okay.
Although that graphic's not very clear, but it's a corner lot on the corner of Chrysler and 4th Avenue in the Glebe. The existing house is close to probably 100 years of age and has two non-conforming rights. The two variances is just bringing into play the existing reduced side yard and the corner side yard, which is 0.6 and 0 respectively. Experience is that when you want to add or provide amendments to an existing building, you have to basically create kind of this legal non-conforming rights to those setbacks. The actual new setback is the rear yard setback. And the rear yard setback is actually created by the distance from the proposed new garage to the rear property line.
Do we have a schematic for that?
Yeah, everything is there. I think can I control the,
No, the coordinator does.
okay, so that's the existing condition, the corner lot. You're looking at Chrysler with 4th Avenue on your left. The next photograph will show the side yard condition. So that's the detached garage, which is currently, if it was left alone, could stay, but because it's in a hydro easement, the owner wishes to build a new one, therefore it gets moved away from almost a 0 property line to a 1.5 meter property line. So it actually improves the spatial separation from the rear yard to the new garage. The reason for the variance for the connection between this new garage and the existing house is the 0 corner side yard. So, sorry. So the connection, and if you just go on to the next slide, that's just again the showing the 0 lot line of the fence and the existing garage, which is on a 0 lot line. So just move on to the next slide. Good. So this is the site plan. So what shows X'd out is the existing garage to be demolished, and as you can see, it actually encroaches into the hydro easement. The new garage is now 1.5 meters, which is the rear yard setback. The only reason why it becomes a setback is that it's being linked underground by the shaded area to the existing basement. The current shaded area is a raised terrace, and we're keeping the raised terrace. It's less than 2 feet above existing grade, but the owner wishes to expand his basement underneath that raised terrace. So because it's being linked and attached to the garage, it's no longer considered attached. It's part of the main house. Therefore, the 1.5 setback becomes the requested rear yard setback. If you just go to the next slide. So that just shows you the garage. It now has there's a convenience access, a stair below grade that connects to the basement, which it currently doesn't have. So now it's a mud room. You can now connect from the garage. The elevated terrace basically stays as is. It's just that now there's a foundation underneath it.
Okay.
Go to the next one. So that just shows you from the street, it has actually no impact on the street. Actually, it improves it because of the separation increase to the rear yard that currently exists. And a 7-foot high fence will still go back, will be reinstated once it's been in place. You can see the solid line behind is actually where the existing terrace is now, and now it'll just become, for lack of a better term, the ceiling of the basement. The next slide, please. So that there just shows you physically the link. That's a cross section showing how the basement is to be expanded and linked into storage and also the staircase into actually now a detached garage.
Okay.
I think that's next slide. That's it.
Pardon me?
And that's our request.
Okay. And how specifically does this application meet the requirements of the 4 tests, Mr. Ritchie?
Well, it doesn't, it's certainly within the guidelines of the official plan. It certainly does not alter the context from the street point of view. It is compatible use. It's a residential use just as part of the existing residential piece. And it's minor in nature.
Note that there's no comment from the local community association and no objections from local residents. I take it that your applicant talked to his neighbors before he filed this application.
That is a correct statement, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. There's no conditions that are being asked for. Hydro Ottawa standard request for to satisfy their offset clearance, which the new garage will do, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the members on this application? No? Are we prepared to grant the application as presented? All in favor? Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Deutsch, your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you, one and all. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Chair, I believe that we have Mr. Wright on the phone.
Ah, okay. Hang on 1 second here. Let me get my stuff. This regards item 5. Mr. Wright, can you hear me? Mr. Wright, can you hear me? Have we lost our connection, I think? I still don't see a connection. Well, we can try again. Wouldn't mind. I'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is item number 4, 106 Sherbrooke Avenue. And this minor variance is to permit a reduced lot width and area. It is proposed to demolish the existing detached dwelling and construct a 3-story, 3-unit dwelling as shown on plans that are filed with the committee. And item number 4, Ms. Dawu is the agent. Is she there?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi there. I'm going to have to administer the oath for you.
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I affirm.
Okay. All right. If you'd like to give us a presentation on your client's application, please.
Sure. So good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jessica Dow. I'm the acting agent for the owner of the site for the application for variances at 106 Sherbrooke. Unfortunately, the owner wasn't able to join us this afternoon, but I do also have with us today the designer for the project, Paul Kershaw. So if there are any specific questions at the end, he's available to answer any questions as well. So just to give a, yeah, no problem. So to give a brief presentation, so the site is a small interior lot which fronts onto the west side of Sherbrooke Avenue, located in Huntenburg. The neighborhood is characterized by a mix of older, low-rise residential uses, some newer low-rise infill development, as well as commercial, including restaurants and retail uses oriented along Wellington Street West, and there's some as well on Gladstone. The immediate context includes, and you can go to the next slide, please. The immediate context includes 1.5 to 2 or 3-story low-rise residential dwellings with a mix of housing types, including singles, duplexes, semis, and multi-unit buildings. And there's also quite a bit of new development being undertaken in the area as well. The subject site presently contains an older single detached 2-story dwelling with a shed and a driveway. The shed, which is located in the rear yard, is to be demolished, and the dwelling is to be demolished while the driveway is to be retained. Next slide, please. So as previously mentioned, the proposal is for the development of a 3-story, 3-unit building, or a triplex, which is a permitted use for the site. To facilitate this development, 2 minor variances to the zoning bylaw are required. That would be to reduction in the required lot width from 12 meters to 9.14 meters, and a reduction in the required lot area from 86 meters squared. So this is an existing lot and a permitted use on the site, and all of the zoning requirements for the site are being met through this proposal. So each unit is going to contain 2 bedrooms. There will be back balconies in the rear yard and separate entrances for the unit. There's going to be soft landscaping located in the rear yard and in the front yard as well, with paver pathways leading to the entrances from Sherbrooke Street. As mentioned, there will be the retained parking space on the south side of the property, which is in the existing location of the driveway and parking space. So I just like to.
That's just one parking space?
Just one parking space, yes.
Okay.
So we were invited to meet with the Hintonburg Community Association. So we presented to them via Zoom last week on September 30th, and we received some really helpful comments that they had reiterated in a letter to the committee, which we've had a chance to review. So in response to those comments, we made a few adjustments, just minor adjustments to the plans, nothing related to the variances, obviously, those are existing conditions, but just relating to some site-specific adjustments to improve the development. So those plans were filed and sent to the committee on Monday and are included in this presentation. So just pointing out those small changes, the first being that we added bike rack and bike parking in the rear yard for the residents, as well as a small shed that's intended for garbage storage to have that enclosed within a small building. So I'll just go to the next slide. Sorry? A tree, yeah. So we. Yeah, so the tree wasn't shown on the site plan, but Mr. Chong is definitely willing to add some landscaping into the rear yard. So originally we had discussed adding a tree in the approximate area of where the garbage enclosure is, but I believe that there is opportunity to incorporate another tree if that's the committee's wish as well.
And there's some comment in the Hintonburg letter regarding the HVAC units and relocating them to mitigate noise.
Yeah, so, and perhaps the designer, Paul, could speak to this a little bit further in terms of the technical side, but he has indicated that they will be small units, so they'll be fairly minimal in terms of visibility and noise impact. I believe the discussion was that they would be located on the balconies, but that's to be confirmed based on where it makes sense for the mechanical units. And again, perhaps he could speak to the more technical side of that, but I can also bring up the next slide, which is the elevation, so you can get a sense of.
Sure.
So another request was that privacy screening be added. So you'll see here that we've added some privacy screening on the back, on the rear decks, on the rear balconies. So perhaps I think Paul was mentioning that there was opportunity to have the units within that area as well, so they'd be more hidden from view.
That privacy screening is going to be across the extent of the rear and along the sides. In other words, all three sides of those two balconies.
They would be along the two sides, but not along the rear.
Why not?
Because my understanding would be that would create too much of an enclosure, and would it be still considered a permitted projection under the zoning? I think also probably just to add some light and opportunity for light and air in the balcony area, but Paul could potentially speak to the rationale of the location of the privacy screening.
If you went to glass screening, your privacy screening's in place and it's fully transparent.
Yeah, and that's a fair point as well. So we could look at opportunities to change the materiality of those screens so that they're more.
There are privacy and overlooking issues here due to the fact that you're adding balconies where none exist currently.
Correct, but the locations do meet the permitted projections under the zoning, and the rear yard, the depth of the rear yard also meets the requirements. So while complying with the zoning, I appreciate the need for screening, which is why we did add those to the side portions, but we could certainly discuss opportunities. I know that the owner is more than willing to add privacy opportunities for the site as well. He's been in discussions with both adjacent neighbors as well. So I believe that we're certainly not opposed to the discussion to adding them all the way around if that's the community's wishes as well.
Certainly mentioned in the letter from the Hintonburg Community Association.
Yeah, for sure. So I can certainly discuss. I know from the owner's perspective, there's no opposition to adding those. So that's something we can do.
Yeah, well, I'd suggest that you continue your conversations with Hintonburg. And I'm sure you can come to a resolution on the balconies.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the owner is actually going to be living on the ground floor unit. So he's certainly interested in maintaining really strong relationships with his neighbors and ensuring that everybody's happy with the development. So that's definitely something we can discuss and put forward as well.
All right. So the elevations we have now show the privacy screening on the side of the balcony?
Yes.
Okay. And if you guys come to, or you and your owner come to an agreement with Hintonburg to make a modification that puts a privacy screen right across the rear extent or the side-to-side extent of the balconies, you're going to have to file a revised elevation with the committee.
Okay. Does that require just sending the revised elevations, or is there any? Okay, perfect.
If you decide to do that, we'd like to have that. They've made a minor change after approval, and it's in there.
Okay, perfect.
We are in all likelihood going to tie this application to plans filed.
I apologize. My internet connection just broke out as soon as you said that. So would you not be tying the plans to the? Tying the variances to the plans? Okay.
Plans filed, yeah. So.
Okay.
Any minor changes we need to have on in our files.
Okay.
All right.
Great. So with that, I have some appendices if there's any additional questions, but again, the site is a permitted use under the zoning and in the general urban area designation under the official plan. This does create a good opportunity for addition of diversity of housing choice in this neighborhood. through an appropriate and compatible infill intensification. And considering the lot is an existing lot and undersized for the proposed permitted use, there's still, as we've demonstrated, adequate area on the site to accommodate the building while meeting all other zoning provisions. We feel, therefore, the proposal is minor and meets the intent and purpose of the zoning and official plan and represents a desirable use for appropriate development, therefore meeting the 4 tests under the Planning Act. So again, if you have any questions, I know I've responded to a few intermittently throughout the presentation, but I'm more than happy to answer any. And again, Paul is available as well.
You're aware of the comments from forestry?
Yes, regarding
the distinctive tree, and what is going to happen with that tree?
So there's one distinctive tree in the rear yard that's 50 that meets the definition of distinctive tree. Sorry, 50 centimeters. So that tree, it was commented in the community association. There was a resident that was concerned for the health of that tree. Donovan would like to keep that tree. So we've recommended that he discuss with forestry to see if there's any recommendations in order to maintain that tree. But the one tree that does meet that will be retained as for now. And if there's any concerns with its health, then he can discuss through forestry.
So you haven't provided the department with a tree disclosure report yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay, but you're going to be required. So I imagine that will be caught up. That tree will be caught up in that report.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. The only other comment is from Hydro regarding satisfying their offset clearance, which is a standard requirement from them, 1 meter from the property line.
Yep, no problem.
You've had discussions with them, and you're all right. You guys are.
Yes, Paul has confirmed that we're fine. Yes.
Okay. We have no letters of objection and a letter of support from the Hintonburg Community Association. Do any of the other members have a question, Mr. Wildman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. I see on one of the plans S1.1 a proposed red maple. Is that still a plan?
Sorry, I'm just pulling up this was on the site plan, you say, sorry?
S1.1, drawing number.
I don't think he's got the right project. We don't have it.
Yeah, I don't see a proposed maple tree on the plan. All the trees proposed are just the existing trees that are currently there.
Interesting. Okay, that's why I'm asking, because it doesn't show up on any of the other drawings. Okay, so the only other tree then that's of any significance is the distinctive tree?
Correct, and that would be in the rear yard closest to the south property line.
I saw that, and you mentioned that you were thinking of another one, but because of the shed that you're putting in for garbage, you won't be putting a second one in.
That's correct, but the owner has identified that he's willing to install additional trees or smaller landscaping as well to help to buffer the property for sure. So, but it was originally intended perhaps for that corner, but with the garbage enclosure and the bike racks, kind of limits the space for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
You filed the revised site plan with committee?
Correct, it was sent on Monday.
Okay. Any other questions from the members on this application? Are we prepared to vote on this application as amended? All in favor? Right, your application is granted. Good luck with your project, and have another conversation with Hintonburg.
Will do. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Next application we'll deal with today will be item 6 on the agenda, 104 Arthur Street. It's a consent to convey a portion of the property to the abutting landowner to the south to regularize the lot line to permit the construction of rear yard additions to both semi-detached dwellings. Before we begin, the members had some questions regarding this, and I think a little confusion. So we need a full presentation on this application. There are a number of residents who are not in favor of the application. Anyway, the agent for this item is Mr. Cooper. Is he there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm going to have to administer the oath to you, Mr. Cooper.
Very well.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I'm able to confirm this.
All right. All right, Mr. Cooper, if you'd like to give us a presentation on your request, please.
Okay, very well. So the nature of the application is wholly and exclusively relating to a lot line adjustment to convey two small parts of land between an existing semi-detached dwelling at 102 and 104 Arthur Street. The purpose of the conveyance is to straighten out an irregular existing demising lot line between the two properties in order to permit for the redevelopment of some rear yard additions in the future. And so we've shown the basic outline of the proposed construction, which is indicated in yellow. There's also an intention to have a portion of building that will be overhanging that at the second floor level. And ultimately, that was the entire nature of our application, was for the lot line adjustment to straighten up the lot line in order to expedite the process when it comes to applying for a building permit.
Okay. Please proceed.
So that's the extent of the presentation. I don't know what else you would like to hear about, but
I think Mr. Wilder has a question or comment. Mr. Wilder? Mr. Wilder, you're muted. Mr. Wilder, you're muted.
Aside from the request before us, I guess you've had discussions with the next door neighbor at, or your client has, at 106 Arthur.
Yes,
and I am very surprised. I'm just going back now to 2011. An addition was made in 2011. What we have now, I guess, is an addition to that addition, and I'm sort of really confused about this application. First of all, having been a planner myself, I'm looking at the 2011 edition, and clearly there's a zoning infraction, a zoning violation, and I'm surprised the next door neighbor hasn't taken this up with the city for a zoning infraction and an adjustment. The eaves of the carport are clearly overhanging her property. The separation distance between her shed and what was built by your client probably would have required a variance. Well, obviously wasn't picked up by our building branch in 2011, but I guess I'm really concerned here about some of the comments that were raised by her in terms of the access to the backyard, your client having to, I guess it's a legal matter, which she'll have to take up in the courts. But clearly, in terms of her trespassing onto your client's property, which she admits she has to do at times, but likewise, he does onto her property. And I guess I'd like to have a little further explanation from your client. I see Mr. Hall is there, as to maybe you can just take us through, Mr. Hall, the site plan. And I'd like to have a clear picture of exactly what is transpiring here and your request. Thank you.
Just to be clear, Mr. Wilder, I'm Robert Hall. I'm legal counsel to the applicants. They asked me to be in attendance today to speak to any any legal questions relating to perhaps concerns over the right of way or these encroachments. In terms of the how the rights of way are navigated on the ground, I don't know that I have much to offer in that regard, other than to say I understand Mr. Cooper has submitted a supplementary schematic as of yesterday to the committee, showing that that it is in fact possible for, call it your average sized vehicle to navigate the existing right of way without trespass at all. Now, again, as I say, I've not been to the site myself. What's actually happening on the ground is a little bit beyond my my ability to speak to today.
Mr. Wilder, if you'd like me to clarify a bit further in terms of what's happening with the site plan, perhaps I wasn't clear, but the intent for the future project is to remove the existing additions that were done in 2011 in the rear, and then to construct new additions. And the whole purpose of going through the lot line adjustment process was to be able to clean up the lot so that we'd have a clean demising line between the two properties. The right of way, although there are concerns coming from Ms. Hiltz at 106 Arthur Street, does not form part of this application. And so our focus has been to speak to and to focus on the nature of the application, which is to ask for what everyone has considered up until this point to be a straightforward application. We've consulted with all the local stakeholders and had no concern. And the only concern, we do have support, in fact, from multiple neighbors. The only concern that has arisen is from Ms. Hiltz. And it relates to a matter which is not part of the scope of this application.
Cooper, could we just call up your draft site plan that you filed and maybe just take us through the different parts? Because I guess I'm confused about the different parts.
Certainly, yeah. I think the coordinator has the control of the documents. So here on the site plan, and again, it's only shown as a schematic. We do not have a fully resolved building design at this time. We're not tied to plans with the particular application. So I was advised by committee staff to just show what the proposed footprint of the building is. And so that's what we've done. The yellow area demonstrates the area of the proposed addition at the grade level. And then there's a dotted portion which indicates the line of the building at the second floor level. The extent of the additions are very similar to the extent of the existing additions. And you can see on the site plan that the line of the existing additions that are to be removed are also dotted in. So the line is very similar, what we're proposing, as to what exists presently. If you want clarity on the right of way and the parts that relate to it, parts 4 and 5 are the parts that form the majority of the right of way, as well as part 3. And part of part 5 is located on the property of 106 Arthur Street, whereas part 4 is located on the property of 104 Arthur, and 102 Arthur has the benefit of access to their property across parts, all those parts.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Ms. McLean, you had a question or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was this semi previously severed through the Committee of Adjustment?
Yes, they do, I believe, exist as two legally separate properties. Along with our applications, we filed all of the existing deeds of lands, and according to those, and Mr. Hall, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but they are legally separate properties, and the right-of-way has existed since the construction of the buildings going back over 100 years.
I'm more concerned with the parts 8 and 9. And so if I understand you, you're tearing down the rear additions you're going to convey parts 8 and 9, which is land owned by 104, and you're going to convey those slivers to 102. I'm just wondering why there's two part numbers, and I just don't understand how the demising wall in the existing addition to be torn down and moved, or I just not clear on that.
Yeah, the entire addition is to be torn down at the rear of the building, and there is an irregular lot line which follows a jog, and in order to regularize it, it resulted in the creation of two very slender triangular parts 8 and 9 that you have observed, and those are the parts that are being conveyed from 104 to 102 in order to normalize the demising property line, so that when the addition is constructed, the demising line will be normal to all of the newly constructed works at the rear of the existing dwelling. I understand this to be a reasonably common process to have to normalize or straighten a property line in order, because if we don't, we end up with a problem when we come to apply for a building permit. The City of Ottawa wants then for confirmation that the demising wall between the said units is constructed to follow this irregular property line. We wanted to avoid that, and so that was the reason for asking for the conveyance, is to normalize that property line.
So you're shifting the property line, and then you'll build the new additions with the party wall along the property line.
That's correct.
And why is there two part numbers? Is there any reason why they have two part numbers?
I think it's just because of the shape of the original lot line was a really odd zigzag. So I think in order to straighten it out in the way that we preferred, that would work with our design and would also normalize the demising wall with the existing part of the semi-detached dwellings that are to be retained. This is what resulted, and that was really the call of the land surveyor, and we just respected the decision to follow that line. And the two parts that resulted are these irregular triangular shapes, which in the end result in about a 0.4 square meter area each, for a total of 0.8 square meters. So it's quite a small area that's being conveyed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from members of the panel? All right. We also have Ms. Hiltz, I believe, who wishes to speak to the matter. She's a neighbor at immediately south of the properties. Ms. Hiltz, you there?
Just have, I guess, not concerns about the lot line adjustment itself, which I realize is.
Well, that's what we're discussing today, Ms. Hiltz.
Yeah, but originally my neighbors came to me because they were going to the Committee of Adjustments with the right of way.
Well, they're not before us with the right of way.
Okay.
Before us with a lot line adjustment. So
when I called up the Committee of Adjustments on Monday and let them know what the situation was and that I had been approached by my neighbors, and originally the Committee of Adjustment application was supposed to include the right of way, or was going to include the right of way. And I gave the person I was speaking to a bit of background, and he did recommend that I do make comments. So that's what I've done.
yes, and we have your letter and the photographs. However, today we're only dealing with the conveyance of two small parcels to regularize the lot lines between 102 and 104. So unfortunately, the right-of-way issue is not before us.
And that doesn't qualify as an identified need.
And I guess you're going to have to. Pardon me?
I just wondered if that qualified for an identified need for an additional variance.
I don't believe so. This is quite frankly, as far as we discussed, this is a matter between you and your neighbors. It's a civil matter, and it's not within our purview to deal with it.
Okay.
However, it's a very good letter, and I'm sure you can You've obviously been in contact with the lawyer for your neighbors. Perhaps there's more discussion that needs to be had to get this issue that you've identified resolved.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the panel regarding this application for consent? Okay, I just have one question. You're going to be building, Mr. Cooper, what, 2 new units on the back of 2 existing units to create 4 units?
No, the intention is to renovate and extend the existing dwellings, but the current building does enjoy 2 accessory dwelling units at the rear. On each unit each enjoys its own. So the intent is to reinstate the existing secondary dwelling units as permitted under the bylaw.
Okay, so it'll be when you're done, when your neighbor and when your clients are done, it'll be 4 units.
That's correct, as it is presently.
Okay, all right. Okay, so Ms. McLean, you're okay with the explanation regarding the severances?
Yes, it's much clearer now, Mr. Chair, now that the additions are coming down, or the existing additions are coming down, and with the condition that planning is suggesting about a one-time conveyance.
Yeah.
Then I think, yeah, I understand it better now. Thank you.
Yes. And I take it, Mr. Cooper, you've seen the planning department's comments with the one-time conveyance language?
Yes, I have, and I believe that Robert's also reviewed those comments.
And it's dated October 2nd from Mr. Nadeau.
Yes.
All right. All in favor of granting the consent on this property? All right. Your application is granted. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next application we'll be dealing with is 507-509 Tweedsmuir, item 7 on the agenda. This is a consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land in order to create 2 new lots, one of which contains the existing detached dwelling, which is proposed to be connected to the semi-detached dwelling currently under construction. And I'd like to have what proposed to be connected means explained to me by the applicant's agent. And I believe the agent for the applicant is Mr. Sean Davies. Is he there?
Hello, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Sean Davies from 509 Tweedsmuir.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Davies, we'll have to start with the statutory declaration to begin with. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
All right. If you'd like to give us a presentation, Mr. Davies, and I just before you begin, I assume that you're aware of the letter from Ms. Carib regarding her concerns.
I did receive a comment yesterday. Sorry, which one are you referring to?
It was from Carl and Jen Carib regarding.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You need to have you comment on that on those concerns from the neighbors as well in your presentation. So please proceed.
Okay. So this is an application for consent. The existing 2-story brick dwelling was shown in part 1. There's a consent application for a construction of a semi-detached currently under construction that will be going part 2, attaching to the existing dwelling. As you can see in that our plan. The part 3 is part of one of the comments that was made by the neighbor as far as I believe the statement and the location of the lot line between the existing and exposed lot spaces. The eaves are protruding. We had dealt with that with the planning and city through a JUMA, joint use agreement, that'll be registered on title with a lawyer, and planning has given their support through their comments on the third point of their committee of adjustment conditions. That was that point. In regards to the point 2, a portion of the porch existing in the residence is on a proposed severed property line. That is to be dealt with the existing building permit of the existing property in part 1, the 2-story building, which will be going through an adjustment for that front porch. So separate to this application. And then number 0.3, proposed lot line jog. So there's an irregular lot line, as you can see, that was made. And the support was made for that in regards to meeting the zoning bylaw agreements allows for a jog. So the planning department, we'd come up with that support for that proposed lot line in 0.3 of that specific letter. So just to address those comments, because we just received those, I think, yesterday evening or today. So they have been addressed within the planning report. If there's any questions as far as specific to the consent application, I'm not sure if everything's clear as far as the plan you have there and that's provided in front of you, but we can address those through the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. Ms. McLean, I believe you had some questions.
Yes, what's being proposed seems to show a proposed severance line through an eave as well as that front porch. Normally, we don't allow portions of one dwelling to extend across a property line. So I'm not clear on how that's being addressed. One of the neighbors suggested that the eave is not meeting the zoning bylaw, and I would tend to agree that if the eave of the house is extending onto somebody else's land or purported to extend onto that part 3, which will form part of the new semi, how does that comply with the zoning bylaw? So, and the third question I think I have is, the application doesn't ask for a grant of easement for part 3. And I'm not sure if you can create a grant of easement in a joint use and maintenance agreement. So maybe you could just address those 3 concerns specifically. Thank you.
Yeah, so my understanding is part 3 is covered under the joint use agreement. So it's no different than a semi through a adjoining wall and a new construction. It's just this is a little bit different because you're keeping with the existing building and adding new, but that we are allowed to register that JUMA on title with the lawyer, and there's no need for a separate variance in regards to that. And as you can see in the planning report as well, the third point, they had looked into that and they had supported that.
So maybe I'll ask planning then. Would severing through an eave of one property and allowing it to extend onto another property as well as the front porch, how is that addressed in the zoning bylaw?
Because it's a semi-detached. I think that's the tough thing that's hard to visualize, but it's no different than if you had a new construction semi-detached, you have a line running through a common wall that would have to be addressed as far as both owners agreeing to that joint maintenance agreement on title. It's just with this one, it's a new part on an older building, but it has no, it's not really different in regards to that joint use agreement.
Well, maybe I'll just ask the planner, the city planner, but just to clarify, when we sever a semi-detached dwelling, the severance, the property line goes down the middle part of the party wall, and we ensure that there are no encroachments over that severance line. But I'll ask planning to address the eave encroachment and how that meets the zoning bylaw under a joint use agreement.
Apologies, I was having some issues unmuting. Through the chair, it has been my understanding that the all components of the, or at least all parts of the existing dwelling that have an eave projecting over the severed property are accommodated through Part 3, and where it is proposed for the addition to connect to the existing house through a party wall. It is noted on, at least on the survey that I'm reviewing off screen here, that there is no even that location that would be affected. Does that get to the
Well, I'm
concern?
still having problems with the fact that you're creating a property line, and they're asking us to allow part of a structure to go over that property line. Now, typically when we sever a semi-detached, we put in a party wall certification that the property line is in the same location of the party wall from the top of the building to the bottom. In this case, you can't do the eve is encroaching onto the other person's land, and the front porch as well. And I just don't think you can. It's an easy fix through a joint use and maintenance agreement. So I'll just leave it at that. But that's my my concern.
I don't know, any further comments?
Yeah, for myself, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the eaves, as I said, nothing I can add towards what the planner's comments were in regards to the eaves not encroaching on any other common space or other eaves overlapping.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilder, you had comments, questions?
Yeah, question I had is one of the comments raised by the, maybe you can reiterate again, Mr. Davies, the portion of the porch again of the existing residence is on the proposed severed property. So are you looking, will the porch be demolished and reconstructed? First question. And then I guess I also have some concern about the proposed jogs. I guess this is, something which is not as clean, which would, even with your changes, I mean, I guess one of the suggestions was, though we require a variance, a narrower severed lot would maintain rectangular lots, would be a better approach to the severance of these lots in the long term. What are your comments on that, please?
So the first comment, the porch, it will be addressed in regards to the existing building, reconstructed and through a building permit with the existing two-story building to address that. I think it's an inch or two that's going to be encroaching that will be brought back and noted. As far as the second comment in regards to the proposed lot line jog, it meets the zoning bylaw requirements requiring a jog for that 6 meter setback. So we felt as though at the front and the back, it's an invisible line that and extremely minor in its nature. So it creates, in a sense, an invisible jog that's essentially a few inches that maintains that distance. And because being a semi, the jog is really internal between the two structures.
I guess my concern is you say it's going to be encroaching and will be noted. You're going to be selling the one half, or you're going to be selling both halves of this property, I imagine?
That's actually incorrect. I don't know where that came from, but no, we will not be selling either of these properties. We'll be retaining them, owning them. So I'm not sure where that came from. But no, we are currently doing, working through a building permit for the existing property for renovations as well. So and the only thing else I can touch on in regards to that jog was created because the property is in fact a through lot. So the only reason that came up as that jog was because of the interpretation for the front line or the front yard. So if we kept it straight, it would in fact invert it, meaning that the frontage would be on Iona and not on Tweedsmuir where it is normally, because it brought us below, I think, the 7.67. It would be 7.43, which makes it just slightly smaller than the Tweedsmuir frontage. So that was done really, and it kind of addresses the concerns with Iona as far as making that slight adjustment to reinstate Tweedsmuir as the front yard and front lot line. That was the only reason that jog was made, was because within that bylaw, it creates that flip of the property.
Could you also
makes sense?
Can you also explain parking? Where exactly are the parking spaces going to be located, or parking space?
For the new dwelling, right in front, there's front yard parking in the front of 509 Tweedsmuir. It's a garage, basically. It's kept within the structure of the garage.
I'm glad you amended your comment. Front yard parking isn't permitted in bylaws, you know.
Yeah, sorry, I meant within the structure in the garage.
So Mr. Davies, the concern by the residents that looks like a driveway is being created at the rear of the property. For those who might be listening, there will not be a parking space that's going to exit to the rear onto Iona.
No. I think there was a misinterpretation. I got an email in regards to the frontage being 509 Tweedsmuir. The rear parking was a right of way that is not within this the scope of this hearing, and it is not parking for the new dwelling. It's only in regards to construction, in an attempt to keep all of the vehicles off the road as much as possible, with all those streets being so narrow. So it is not parking created for the new parcel 509.
Thank you.
No problem.
Blaine, you had more comment?
Do you have an elevation that you can show us of the completed project?
I do. If they could show it on the screen, we can. Are they not? It was filed with the committee. Are they not on the application? I could try to do it from here if there isn't one on file. Should be there, the front elevation, or if not, I can get it right now. So I'm not sure if I don't see it up there. So I have a picture, if it comes up on the screen, to show the front elevation here, because I don't see it coming up on do my best to. But basically it's keeping in line with the existing property. It's a red brick mason 412 pitch roof, modest. I think it's a 700 and change floor plate, 2-story. But this is the front side elevation on Tweedsmuir. That's currently under construction as 509.
So it also has an eave as well. So do you have one that shows the attachment to the existing, like, do you have them side by side, the existing elevation together with the new one?
Yeah, so it shows it there. It doesn't go into detail, but that basically that shaded area is showing, but I do not have an actual visual frontage of this, the front yardscape with the existing property as a visual with the way the house sits now.
And where's the parking for the existing house going to be? Will there be parking for the existing house?
There's no parking for the existing property.
And I guess is the part 3, the easement lands, is it sufficient to put a ladder up to maintain that eve? Is it wide enough? It's 0.77. How long is the eve?
Yeah.
How wide is the eve?
The eaves is 18 to 20 inches. I'm not, you're talking about on the outside of the existing building or the new building?
The existing building.
I don't have an exact measurement. I'd have to submit that to know exactly without Mr.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if that satisfied the other point, if there was another question that you'd asked prior to that.
No, I think that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the members of the committee on this application? All right, thank you, Mr. Davies. The committee is going to reserve its decision on this application, and you'll be receiving your our decision within 10 days. Thank you very much. All right, the next application on the agenda is item number 8. That is 245 Squadron Crescent. And I believe Mr. Chatter is the agent for the applicant, and we do have a statutory declaration, so I won't have to administer the oath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chatter.
Yes, sir.
This is a minor variance application to permit the rooftop terraces to be located at the exterior wall of the building. It is proposed to construct a total of 192 new stacked and back-to-back townhouses, of which 62 units will be subject to the requested reduction. So what we need on this is a full presentation on this, on your request for relief. So please proceed.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The coordinator's got a short presentation that we did. We did submit a full rationale as we went through our review of this. If you go to the next slide. So our request indeed is to ask for a reduction to 0 meters from the 1.5 meter requirement of section 161(17)B of the bylaw. If you go to the next slide for me. This is this plan that we used during the site plan application process for our clients. You can see where the arrow is pointing to. There's a combination of patio areas or terraces on the top floor of these units. The part where the blue arrow points to is a solid face, and just to the right of that is a picture of a glass portion. So it's a combination. The terrace would be surrounded by a combination of those two types of material. On the left side, we did an insert for you to show you where in the brick case, we would normally have the terrace going right to the brick, which is on the left side of that drawing. With the 1.5 meter setback, we would actually have to construct something inside of the existing terrace to keep the setback maintained at 1.5. So the wall that you see would become just a parapet. It wouldn't be actually part of the terrace. The wall wouldn't change, which is allowed by the bylaw, because it's just part of the parapet wall on the dwelling. If you can go to the next slide for me. This is the plan view of the units. So we have stacked units. So the upper units have, you can see the black line is the exterior wall of the building as proposed. The 1.5 meter setback is where we would have to construct those false setbacks, call them a wall or a fence inside to keep the 1.5 meters back from the actual edge of the building. And then the actual floor units you can see as the lighter gray color inside of those red lines, which is where the actual boundaries of the walls of the units are. So effectively what the bylaw was requiring was this setback for 1.5 meters, which came out of the initial reviews of the mature neighborhoods where we were trying to stop overlook in some of the existing neighborhoods where you'd be constructing this type of tall dwelling with a terrace on the top floor. In this case, our client is building a new build. It's in Water Ridge Village, which is the Canada Lands company's redevelopment of the old Rockcliffe Air Base. There are no overlook issues with this proposal because of the nature of the development. We're proposing all of these type of medium density dwellings on the blocks of land. If you could go to the next slide for me. Opposite Squadron Crescent, there are some existing units that have been constructed, which show you exactly how this actually looks in play. We just took some pictures in the past couple of weeks just so you could see what they look like. That's an R5 zone, which doesn't have the same provision included in the bylaw for a setback requirement. So the actual change that's being required is because of the R4 zone, which, as you know, is a very different zone in Ottawa's bylaw versus the R5. Our client did purchase the land from Canada Lands knowing it was an R4 zone, but the intent of the development was being processed at the same time as the bylaw was being amended to create the new R4 provisions for the mature neighborhoods. So we kind of got caught up in the layering of the bylaw. And when the site was actually rezoned by Canada Lands, it wasn't known that this would be a provision, so they didn't create any special exception for it. Our clients, when they did the actual site plan application, hadn't picked up on that change to the bylaw either, and it only came to light when we were actually subject to building permit review. The plans reviewer picked up on it. The site plan has been approved by the city for the development format. And so we're trying to catch up a little bit here on the back end. We did go through, if you go to the next slide for me, we did run through the 4 tests for you. It is our opinion it's minor in nature. We don't believe this change in setback would have any adverse effects on the abutting development. It is desirable because this provides an appropriate development form for the upper stories of the stacked units. So we do believe it's a desirable variance as well. If you go to the next page for me. It does conform to the intent of the official plan. Yes, this is, we're providing all of the intent of the official plan for amenities, open space, and as our opinion, it does conform to the general intent of the OP and the secondary plan that was adopted for this area. And the general intent of the zoning bylaw, I believe, is met because the intent was to provide a setback where you may have an overlook problem with another rear yard, which we don't think is here. That's a summary, Mr. Chair. If you have any specific questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I'm looking at the graphic that shows the land surrounding these proposed units. What's going to be built immediately west, east, and south of your project?
Let me just switch my screen here, Mr. Chairman. I'll go to that. So immediately to the west is the community park. Immediately to the east is a similar development, a combination of townhouses and stacked townhouses. Immediately to the north are the pictures that I had shown you in my presentation, which are stacks.
What about to the south?
That's the stormwater pond. Opposite the stormwater pond, probably, I would say, probably 50 meters from the road edge to the next development, which is a series of 1970s rental townhouses.
Any questions from the members on this application? So to reiterate, you guys missed the setback requirements in the R4 zone. And that's why.
It's a simple explanation, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir.
And it got caught in the building permit stage.
Yes, it did.
You have planners working for your company?
I can claim I didn't do the site plan, Mr. Chairman. I was brought in after the fact.
Because quite frankly, a large builder like this shouldn't be making mistakes like this.
I cannot disagree with you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else to state, Mr. Chatter?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chair, unless there's any other questions.
There's no other questions from the members. Do we wish to reserve on this application, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah. All right. We're going to reserve on this application, Mr. Chatter. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll release. Well, the decision will be released to you within 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee.
Thank you. All right. Next application that we'll deal with is number 11, 875 Montreal Road, Black Holdings. And I don't believe, yes, we do have a stat deck on that, so we won't need to do the oath. This is a minor variances to permit an increased and reduced building height. It is proposed to construct 2 buildings on this vacant property in 2 phases. Phase 1 will consist of a 2-story mixed-use building, and it will be located on the east side of the property. And phase 2 will consist of a 3-story office, retail, and residential building, and it will be located on the west side of the property. But Mr. Bede at Foten, I believe, is the agent on this. Yeah, you're there, Mr. Bede.
Hello, Mr. Chair. This is Tim Bede.
Yes, I have one question. At what stage is the site plan at?
We're at the final stages of the site plan now. We've gone through 2 rounds of technical circulation with the city and responded to the comments that came from that circulation period, and are now have finalized the plans and are preparing the delegated authority report and site plan agreement.
So you won't be back in front of us with additional variances regarding this property.
No, we will not. There's been a comprehensive review, Mr. Chair, of the plans and the site plan over the last months to ensure that we have a plan to you today that is the final iteration and represents the intended build out of the subject property.
All right, thanks. If you'd like to proceed with your presentation, please, regarding this application.
Okay. Sure. So as mentioned, my name is Timothy Bede. I am the agent for the applicant at the property owner at 875 Montreal Road. We're with Foten. My colleague, Brian Casagrande, is also on the call today, on the video today. And if need be, we can, the property owner, as well as the project architect are here with us today to help to answer any questions that might arise regarding the intents for the lands as well as the design. So I'll get into it here. The property owner intends to redevelop the subject property, which as mentioned is a vacant lot, which was previously used for car sales, into 2 separate low-rise mixed-use buildings constructed over 2 phases, which has been addressed in the site plan control process. The property, 875 Montreal Road, is located in the Rideau-Rockcliffe ward in the eastern portion of the city of Ottawa. It's a double corner lot with frontage on 3 public roadways with 28 meters along Codds Road, 30 meters of frontage along Montreal Road, and 36 meters of frontage on Brunel, and has a total land area of 1,322 meters squared. So next slide, please. The property is currently zoned Arterial Main Street Subzone 10, Exception 2199. As you know, the intent of the AM10 zone is where the city has objectives to promote development which achieves higher quality design along arterial main streets with improved interface between the private and public realm. So the AM10 provisions, which I'll get into in greater detail later on in the presentation, include requirements for buildings that are closer to the street and the front and side property lines, have a certain minimum of building glazing, minimum building heights, all with the intent to better frame and animate the street. Next slide, please. The subject property is designated arterial main street in the official plan on Schedule B. So the policy is similar to that of the zoning bylaw of the arterial main street, are looking to accommodate intensification and redevelopment on these streets with increased densities and a positive interface and relationship to the public realm. Next slide, please. So a major factor in the design and the deliberations, and you'll see in the instigator for the required minor variances that we're requesting today, is the existing context of the site, specifically the extensive Hydro Ottawa infrastructure framing all property lines. So there's significant Hydro Ottawa infrastructure in the form of poles, conductors, and lines located at the interface between Montreal Road, Brunel Street, and Cods in the subject property. And there are hydro easements along Montreal Road frontage. The significant infrastructure envelops the whole perimeter and poses unique challenges in realizing a design that ensures the desired built form, not only from the property owners, but in terms of how to respect the intent of the zoning bylaw. So in that light, the project architects and the owner of the property have been working diligently to adhere to the applicable zoning regulations where possible, but have also worked very closely with Hydro Ottawa to discuss their requirements and to meet or exceed their clearance requirements where possible. Next slide, please. And we can see here on all frontages the extensive hydro infrastructure. Next slide, please. And here we can see that as well. And I'll have a slide in a moment that showcases how the infrastructure projects the requirements for separation projects into the subject property. This slide here indicates not only the Hydro Ottawa easement along the Montreal Road right-of-way frontage, as well as significant road widening requirements and site triangle requirements, all which have posed challenges in terms of the design, but have ultimately led to the design we're proposing today. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site plan. Due to the proximity to the hydro infrastructure, the front and corner side lot lines, the second story of both buildings, as you'll see in a moment, are made to step back to adhere to the above mentioned clearance. It means that a portion of both buildings is below the required minimum two-story height within the 10 meters of the lot line as stipulated in the zone, AM10. And next slide, please. Indicated in blue are the three areas in terms of the frontage minimum height requirements, as well as a small portion of the phase 1 building's maximum height, which have been impacted. So similarly, the roof line of the phase 1 building, which is on the east side of the property here, on the right of the projection, along Brunel Street, was altered and reduced in length to accommodate Hydro Ottawa. So as the height is in this definition, in this height topology, or roof topology, is measured from the midpoint between the ridge and the eaves. The height of the building, as per the zoning bylaw definition, is measured as slightly higher when the distance between those two, the ridge and the eaves, is reduced. So although the actual height of the building hasn't changed, the measured height is slightly over at by 0.28 meters from the maximum 11 that's established in the zoning bylaw. It's important to note that that 11-meter height is only for the 20 meters from the rear lot line when abutting residential. So only that portion of the blue dash line there is where that requirement for reduced zoning bylaw provisions is required. Next slide, please. So we can see here, indicated by the red circles, how the hydro requirements have kind of guided the design of the building. and kind of required stepping back along the front and corner side lot lines to accommodate the clearance areas. Next slide, please. Although those building design changes were required, we can see from the submitted elevations and plans that the building is still able to achieve the majority of the requirements under the AM10 zone regarding frontage, grade, glazing, active entrances, and although stepped back after the first story, still manages to provide a positive interface and framing of the public right-of-way. Next slide, please. These are just indicating where the minor variances are required in terms of minimum building height on both buildings. Next slide. Again, the rear yard elevation indicates how this building design has been kind of guided by those requirements. Next slide. And a portion of these buildings which are requiring minor relief from the zoning bylaw, specifically the max height provision in the rear of the building. Next slide, please. And again, a side yard elevation for the phase 1 building, where we can see the second story was stepped back from the first story to accommodate those requirements. Next slide. And the blue rectangle at the rear of the building indicates that portion of the building which requires relief from the maximum height permissions within 21 meters of the residentially zoned property. Next slide, please.
Okay.
And I'll go, and again, this is another elevation indicating the building's design and how it is able to achieve the majority of the positive and required zoning bylaw provisions. I'll move along to the rationale in terms of achieving the 4 tests of the minor variance. So in terms of achieving the intent and objectives of the official plan, the proposal is within the arterial Main Street area, Schedule B, through proposing a low-rise mixed-use development with considerate and complementary design features. The building complies with the relevant permitted use, urban design, and compatibility policies of the official plan. So despite the necessary step backs on the second story, the building still maintains a positive interface with Montreal, Cods, and Brunel Street, and is able to adequately frame the public realm, providing for a vibrant street frontage, promotes the objectives of the arterial Main Street policies within the official plan. Regarding the zoning bylaw, as noted, the footprint scale and at-grade setbacks, active frontage requirements, and massing of the proposed building was originally designed to respect the permitted as-of-right provisions and was required to change slightly based on Hydro Ottawa's clearances. The purpose of the AM10 zone is to impose development standards that will ensure new development is complementary, promotes active and positive interface, and those objectives and intent is maintained. As the proposals for a low-rise mixed-use building, which is permitted in the zone, with a total of 4 residence uses above grade on the second and third stories, and with non-residential at grade, facing the streets with active entrances. The at-grade commercial and medical clinic portions of the building have been designed to promote that positive interface with 4.5 meter first story height, which is achieving the provisions of the zoning bylaw for the first story. And the building as proposed is appropriate, as mentioned, as it still provides for the intent and objectives of the zoning bylaw and official plan for providing a compatible, respectful built form and design using high quality materiality and facade articulation to ensure that it's a positive improvement on the existing condition, as well as for future years to come in terms of improving this section of Montreal Road. It has a modern design aesthetic, and both buildings provide the required amounts of glazing and active entrances and convenient access from the street. So finally, are the requested variances minor? There's no increased shadowing or privacy impacts expected from the minor increase of 0.28 meters, 28 centimeters beyond the 11-meter permitted height from within 21 meters of the residential zones to the rear. The building is actually set back 12 meters from that rear yard interface, and therefore any negative impacts of this slight increase in height are believed to be mitigated. And finally, as mentioned, the provisions for the maximum height along the arterial main street could not be achieved in this instance. However, the intent of that provision in terms of providing building that frames and interfaces positively with the street had been achieved through high quality design and a positive and interactive at-grade interface. So that is our presentation. I welcome any questions you might have about the minor variances required today.
Parking, what are you providing on site? How much?
The parking is provided at the rear, located from Cods Street. There are 10 surface parking lot spaces required at grade to the exterior of the building at the rear. And then there are parking spaces provided for individual buildings within those buildings at the rear of the buildings as well.
And the interior parking is for businesses or residents?
It's anticipated that it would likely be provided for visitors, customers, and patrons of the medical uses as well as the retail uses.
So there's going to be a medical facility at this location?
The property owners intend to build and then utilize the first building to the east as their own orthodontic and dental clinic, and have built a second and third story residential use unit for their use.
Okay. And the city is satisfied that 10 parking spaces is sufficient for this type of use?
The parking provided, Mr. Chair, satisfies the requirements of the zoning bylaw. I can let Soleil speak to their interpretation of that.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. The minimum parking requirements are met here.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bede.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments from the other members? No? Are we prepared to vote on this application? All in favor of granting the application as applied for? Application is granted unanimously. Good luck with your project, Mr. Bede.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Next application that we'll deal with this afternoon is number 12 on the agenda, 248 250 City View. I believe Mr. Hall is the applicant's agent on this.
Afternoon.
This is an application for consent to subdivide the property into two separate parcels of land to create separate ownerships for 2 units of a 4-door row dwelling. We have a question regarding the conditions. I'm sure you're aware of them. The department has said 1 would be independent services, 2 is a noise warning on title, and 3 is a joint use and maintenance agreement. And we understand that there have been comments made by, I guess, you or someone else, that items 2 and 3, conditions 2 and 3 are already in place on title for those properties. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. I did provide a copy of there's 2 joint use maintenance agreements already registered on the titles to both properties. That would deal with point number 3 in the planning department's letter.
Okay.
The subdivision agreement that is also registered on title as part of the, I guess, the original development of the subdivision. So this is instrument OC 1235634. I provided a copy of that to the committee as well.
Okay.
I'd indicated that that deals with condition number 2. I did a bit more of a review of that subdivision agreement. I believe it takes care of condition number 1 as well. The separate services are provided for in the original subdivision agreement. So as far as I can tell, all of the comments provided by Mr. Nadeau are answered between documents that are pre-existing on title.
And does Mr. Nadeau have these documents?
I believe so, sir.
Mr. Nadeau, regarding your conditions and the documents.
The documents were provided to committee on Monday or Tuesday of this week.
Okay.
The conditions are included just as a matter of course, with the understanding that if they're already in place, it should be easy for the applicant to provide evidence. If they're not, then we are covered either way.
And the applicant has provided evidence, I do believe.
Yes.
So we don't need those conditions.
If the committee's preference is to strike the conditions, that would be fine.
I think that would be superfluous to needs, quite frankly. Any comments from the other members of the committee? No. We had one nearby neighbor who I think.
Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Wildman had.
Okay, Mr. Wildman, sorry.
Thank you. Just for point of clarification, I just want to make sure before we potentially decide to waive the conditions, Mr. Nadeau, you've looked at those 3 items and you have no concerns?
I have not had time to review those items.
Okay. So I'm supportive of some form of a condition that says provided that the city has reviewed them and accepts their that they're in satisfactory format or something along those lines, that the conditions do not need to be fulfilled. I just would be concerned that, you know, perhaps upon review, they identify something that might be a concern. Does the applicant's agent have a concern with that type of approach?
I mean, no, I think between Mr. Nadeau and I, it'll be pretty easy to satisfy these conditions. I don't have a problem with that if you would prefer to impose it.
Thank you.
Makes sense to me. Thank you, Mr. Wildman. So we can modify the language regarding conditions to reflect Mr. Wildman's comments. All right. All in favor of granting this consent? All right. Subject to that modified condition, your application is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jerry, what do we got left? 15. 1. Next item on the agenda, when we tried this before, we'll see if we're successful, is item number 1, which is 509 Windermere. And I believe the agent for this application was Mr. Mulholland. And apparently he's raised his hand. Is he there? Mr. Mulholland.
I am here.
Yes, we can hear
you.
Oh,
good. Sorry about that. We've been having some technical issues on this end.
Before we I imagine there's been a few oaths at your office regarding the technical issues. Anyway, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
All right. So this is a minor variance application to permit a reduced northern interior side yard setback and to permit eaves to be located closer to the northerly lot line. It is proposed to demolish the existing detached garage and to construct a two-story addition on the north side of the existing two-story detached dwelling. We note that, and if you, there's the city as forestry services has noticed that there's a city tree on the right of way in front of the dwelling, so we need you to deal with that during your presentation. So if you'd like to give us your presentation regarding the
yeah, I think I don't know if the plans are available to you, but as you can see, oh, there we go. As you can see from the plans, it's a fairly straightforward addition to replace the existing detached garage. As you said, the detached garage is quite a bit, quite close to the property line. So the new attached garage will be in line with it. Or rather, it's closer, farther away from the property line than the existing addition, but still requires a setback. We've also set the garage in from the front of the house to keep it a little less prominent on the streetscape. And we are reducing the overall footprint of the garage, or the driveway that leads into the garage. The road cut itself is staying the same to reduce the impact on that tree. And then beyond that, there'll be a little bit less hardscape after that. I think if there's a elevation farther along, perfect. So you can see here, we're adding the new, a new front porch as part of the addition that doesn't require a setback, but the roof will be continuous across to help reduce the prominence of the garage as well. And then there'll be a setback second story that provides some extra living space on that floor. I believe that's that's the extent of it. If there's anything else sort of question-wise, I'd be happy to answer those.
Regarding the eaves, how are you going to handle the water?
Actually, if you just go back to the elevation, there are the 3Ds that we just had. There'll be eavesdropping on the portion of the eaves that's sloped towards the neighboring property, and the eaves where it's a gable face of the property, the water will flow down to that eavesdropping.
Okay. And while we have this this graphic up, Ms. McLean was wondering regarding the south property line, your south side yard. How wide is that going to be?
The south side yard?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just pulling up on the view I have here. Come out to 2.45 meters on that side.
Is that from the wall or from the chimney?
That would be from the wall. From the chimney, might have to just pull that up. Doesn't look like we dimensioned it from the chimney, but I'll pull it up on our computer here. Apologies, I hadn't been expecting to require Revit, so it's
well, someone may be expecting to be, and that's on the side of the house, so you have to have an adequate space to do so.
All right, so from that side yard, the distance from the chimney. So from the edge of the chimney to the property line, it would give us 6'4". So metrically, that would be 1.94 meters.
Okay, all right. Ms. McLean, you happy with the answer?
Yes, thank you. I couldn't read the southerly side yard on the site plan very clearly. The only other question I had was, do you have a photograph of that southerly side yard or a photograph of the existing house? It seemed to be substantial vegetation on that south side, and that will be your access to the rear yard once the new addition is built. And I'm just wondering, are you satisfied that there will be sufficient access given the vegetation that's in that southerly side yard?
Yeah, we didn't, I mean, the owners ultimately are the ones that will be required to do the maintenance, but they had no concerns that way with access.
There's, you're aware of the comment from one of the neighbors that you should build within the bylaw?
Yeah, I mean, the Planning Act allows for minor variances from the bylaw. I don't think there's any other comment I can make other than that.
All right. So how does this application meet the requirements of the 4 tests?
Well, excuse me. I'm working from someone else's notes system, so I apologize. It's minor in its nature. We're not doing anything too far beyond the required setbacks. And there's a number of other houses, as we noted in our application cover letter, that have similar setbacks to what we're proposing. We've increased or improved the use of the land by removing the existing detached garage, which right now is nearly on the property line, and in this way we've been able to consolidate the space. And I think overall it's certainly an upgrade and improving the land use by improving that green space in the rear yard.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the panel on this application?
No, I just note, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Wildman had declared interest on this application.
Yeah, he did. All right. Prepared to vote on this application for variance? All in favor of the application as provided to us? Your application is approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you. And my apologies again for the technical issues.
That's all right. It happens. It's not the first time. Now, for the third time, we will try item number 5 on the agenda, which was a requested adjournment from the planning department. And Mr. Wright is the agent for the for 569 McLeod. Is Mr. Wright there? I see his name. Do we have sound? Mr. Wright. Can you hear me, Mr. Wright? We have video, Mr. Wright. A part of you. You need to angle your screen so we can see your face. Can't hear you yet. All we have is video, Mr. Wright. We don't have your audio.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Before we begin, we have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time? I still can't hear you, Mr. Wright. Well, we're trying to connect to audio.
Hello?
Yes, did you hear the oath that I administered?
Yes, I did. I so affirm.
You so affirm. All right. The department has requested an adjournment of this item,
Correct.
and we're wondering if you're amenable to an adjournment or.
Well, we were curious as to that because these variances were granted in 2017. There's been no changes. The only change is converting the basement into a fourth unit, but the setbacks, et cetera, are exactly the same for the building as constructed. I sent a picture. And as well, Soleil Carvajal, if I pronounce her name correctly, had asked that the amenity area of 60 square meters be met, which we did. So it made us adjust the parking a little bit, but the amenity area, 60 meters, has been obtained for the 4 units. So really, the application hasn't changed except for the addition of the 4th unit, and the amenity area was increased in size.
But a site plan application was filed on the 14th of September?
Yes, and there was a one filed earlier, but it was filed directly with Simon Diaco, who said, I can't do it right now, would you send it? So I've resent the application, but the original materials were sent in the middle of August, and then it's been reissued according to Simon's direction. They've been with the planning department. I'm not sure where they are at this point.
And the difference between what we approved on the 7th and then on December 9th in 2017 and now is how much?
Nothing. No difference whatsoever. The only thing we increased was the size of the amenity area, because the original site plan had 48 square meters. We have 60 square meters because the planning department said, please assure you reach the amenity area on the lot. So we did that.
And that's the 15.
Other than that, the variances didn't change at all between now and then.
That's to meet the requirement for a 4-unit apartment building of 15 square
Yes,
meters.
which is 15 square meters per unit, which is 60.
Okay. All right. Ms. McLean, you have a comment?
When I reviewed the previous minor variance decision, I thought that the bylaw requirements for lot width and lot area were less for the 3-unit than they are in this application. So I just want confirmation, again, either from planning or from Mr. Wright, that the bylaw requirements were the same.
Yes, the requirements of the bylaw and the request for the variance are exactly the same, Ms. McLean. There's no change between lot width, lot area, etc., and the side yards, because the building is now up under the original variance applications, which were approved. And now what the owner has asked me to do is to apply for the variance as they apply to a 4-unit building, because we haven't been able to change the footprint. And we also assured that the 60 square meters amenity area was shown on the site plan you have in front of you.
So
I did send a photo I did send a photo of the building just to ensure that everybody knew what the building looked like as of today.
Yeah.
And as you can see, we're not doing anything to the building in terms of its footprint or size, etc. All they're doing is converting the basement.
So, Mr. Wright.
So that's why we had to ensure a greater, assure ourselves of a greater amenity area on the plan.
So when I looked at the previous decision, the bylaw requirement was 12 meters in width, and I just asked planning, it's 15 meters now. Is there a discrepancy here or not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could answer this question. So the zoning standards for a 3-unit dwelling on the R4S zone is 12 meters for a lot width and 360 for lot area. For an apartment dwelling, it's 15 meters for lot width and 450 for square for lot area.
Correct.
Larger. Okay.
So the variances asked for are the same, but the lot width and the lot area had changed from a 3-unit to a 4-unit building or a low-rise apartment building.
Right.
Well, the variances are different in that they're requiring a larger variance because the bylaw requirements have changed for a 4-unit. That's the way I
from a 3-unit. From a 3-unit to a 4-unit, there's a slight difference in the lot area and the lot width, yes. Slightly larger for a 4-unit, but the variances being asked for are exactly the same. Well, the building is up. We can't do anything about that. So the variances are exactly a reflection of the building and the existing situation. There's been no change since the 3 units went up. There's no change now.
And the site plan, it's
just that the lot size and the lot area under the R3 or R4 were slightly different, but the variances requested are exactly the same.
The site plan you filed is the same as the one you filed in 2017.
Yes.
No change.
Essentially.
No, essentially. Or
the only thing we changed, Mr. Chairman, was to make sure that the amenity area of 60 square meters was achieved. Because we'd had some indication from planning that if we went less than the 60 square meters, they wouldn't be very receptive to it. So we ensured that the amenity area of 60 square meters was given, or allowed, I should say, shown as such on the site plan. So that there's no discrepancy between the 3 and the 4 unit. They all have 15 square meters per unit.
All right. Okay.
I don't know exactly what site plan control app's going to do because the building is up. It's occupied, and basically they're adding a 4th unit. So I'm not sure how far the site plan control application can be reviewed because all of this is in place right now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wright. At this point, I'd like to proceed with the application. How does the rest of the panel feel? In agreement? Yeah. All right. And Mr. Wildman, yes, no? Yeah. All right, Mr. Wright, if you'd like to make your presentation, we will hear the application.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, as you know, the application was filed to deal with 3 variances from the existing bylaw, which is a lot width, lot area, and the western interior side yard. None of those standards can be met that this bylaw has, which is basically a lot width of 15 meters, a lot area of 450 square meters, and a minimum side yard of 1.5, and the side yard of 8.6. This is all based on the fact that in 2017, the same variances were requested, granted. The site plan control application was not necessary for a 3-unit. However, the building was put up. I did give you a photo of showing the existing building, 569 McLeod, the 3-story building. And I read all of the comments from all the agencies, and the only one that made me hesitate was the question about an adjournment because it was felt that the site plan control application should be further along or advanced before this particular matter can be dealt with. And my submission to you would be the building is there. The variances are not a change from what happened in 2017. The only change will be in the interior of the building in terms of adding a 4th unit. So I don't quite understand why an adjournment would be requested because I'm not sure what site planning people are going to find with an existing situation such as this. That's my submission. I'm just saying I wish the committee would proceed and my client can finish off the site plan control application which has been submitted. Since, as far as we know, it's been sent to staff. We haven't got confirmation, but we were told it's been circulated to staff. That's all we know at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the chair and committee.
I don't know if you were on this application back in 2017 or not.
No, I wasn't.
But Mr. Wilder and I sat on that panel, and at the request of the planning department, we imposed a condition that this dwelling be a 3-unit dwelling only.
That was a condition?
That was a condition.
I'm sorry, I wasn't on the file, Mr. Chairman, so
Yeah, well,
I have a copy of the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
There were 3 conditions that we imposed. Location, size of the proposed construction being in accordance with the revised site plan, et cetera, et cetera. The date of November 4th, 2017. Internal layout of the proposed ground floor basement unit being in accordance with the floor plans filed and Committee of Adjustment date stamped November 1st, 2017. That was a request from the planning department as well. And 3, the variance applied to the use of the property as a 3-unit dwelling and being restricted to this use only. So,
unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of that condition. I have lots of other information on this site and what occurred, but that condition I'm not aware of.
well, that's what we granted in 2017. Why should we grant?
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying it's not a condition I've been made aware of.
All right, just thought I'd let you know in case you were unaware.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I would have thought about this in a different manner if I was aware of that condition, but I wasn't made aware that this was to be, I use the word capped at 3 units. That'd be a good way of putting it.
That's exactly what we did.
No, I said I wasn't aware of that ever.
Requested the department, and I find it, quite frankly, very odd that the department would now say get a site plan so you can justify 4 units when the same department said 3 max on that site. And nothing's changed with the zoning bylaw, Mr. Wright, because the R4 amendments don't apply here.
Correct.
The same performance standards that were in place in 2017 are the performance standards that you're applying under. Anyway, Ms. McLean, you had a comment?
Just wondered if I could ask planning staff why the bylaw requirement for lot width and lot area increase when you move from a 3-unit to a low-rise apartment. Is there a reason why you need more lot area and lot width?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would believe that that's just to accommodate that extra unit, perhaps services or more space to be as a requirement, because you're adding 1 extra unit, perhaps it will have a couple of more bedrooms or something like that. This is me just looking at why perhaps the main reason, but I can only just speculate.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilder?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I was involved with that application, and it was very clear when I put the question at the time to the party that, oh yes, no question, we're going to be using the ground floor and the basement. It'll be connected, it'll be 1 single unit. And that's the way we understood it. And that's the way it was left in terms of our decision and the conditions that were imposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with you, Mr. Wilder. When I saw the property, it showed that the first floor and the basement area was linked. But there was never any mention that there was a question of capping the number of units. It was a question of what the owner put to me was to convert the basement to a 4th unit, but I never was told about this one other condition.
Is this the same owner that owned the property in 2017?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wildman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just wonder if planning staff has anything to add after Mr. Wright's comments about he's not clear on what the purpose of the adjournment is, and second, what in planning's mind has changed such that the 4 units is now something that would be potentially supported.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the reason for the adjournment on the site and requesting that the site plan control be submitted first is just so perhaps in this instance it might be a different story, but the point of having a site plan to go first is to go through the first round of circulations, to look at transportation, landscaping, grading that may have any effect on the land. And that's why we were saying first to go through site plan control, get at least the first round of comments, then come back for the variances. With respect to the fact that the this was approved as a triplex and there was a cap, staff was not aware at this time that there was that imposition. I believe the reason back in 2017 for that was to try and reduce the amount of triplexes that were coming into committee and then being converted after the fact for 4 dwelling units, and then applying just again for minor variances. In that regards, I believe staff will have to look at the overall impact of what a 4 dwelling unit or the addition of a 4 unit would have in this area on an already built site.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, please enlighten me. Did I hear you say that when it was before the committee the last time that it was planning that had a desire to cap it at 3, or did I misunderstand what you'd said?
Oh, you didn't misunderstand me, Mr. Wildman, and I'll read you the December 4th, 2017 comment to committee. Department is satisfied that the amenity space as shown on the revised site plan is sufficient to be functional for this purpose, and that there are no further concerns with the application as proposed. Should the committee approve this application, the department requests that it be subject to the proposed ground floor basement unit being in accordance with the floor plans date stamped November 1st, 2017 by the committee, and applying only to the purposed use of the lands as a 3-unit dwelling. Period.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's safe to say that you know that we know that, but I thought for the record that ought to be made abundantly clear here today. So I appreciate the comments from staff and Mr. Wright and yourself, Mr. Chair.
Anything further, Mr. Wright?
Well, the only thing I was going to say, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, that I do have, which I didn't send to you, but I do have correspondence from planning staff from the last year talking about this building becoming a 4-unit building and what sorts of plans they'd like to see and what sorts of changes they'd like to see. And not once did I find a paragraph that said, oh, by the way, the building is capped at 3. Why are you asking for 4? They talk about what sorts of plans would be necessary and variance would be necessary for a 4-unit building. But nobody raised the issue of the capping of the number of units. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, it's not something that seemed to be made aware of or reached out in such a fashion. I would have said no or stop or let's see what we can do. But all my correspondence dealt with how we deal with this existing situation to get it to add a 4th unit. Nothing else can I tell you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Ladies and gentlemen, let's reserve on this after the hearing. We'll reserve Mr. Wright, and you'll have our decision within 10 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry about the communication problem here. I think I'll put my computer in the garbage tonight, try and get a newer one. But thank you again.
Buy an apple.
Yeah, this isn't an apple. That's my wife's telling me, buy an apple.
Right.
Thank you again.
Well, they always are.
Well, thank you very much, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye. See you. The final item on the agenda that we'll deal with today is item number 13, and this is 512 Cooper Street. It's a minor variance to permit reduced front, rear, easterly, and westerly side yards, a basement secondary dwelling unit entrance on the front wall, a deck and stairs to project in the east side yard, a balcony projected to the property line, an increased building height, a rooftop terrace to exceed the gross floor area, not require an opaque screen, and the requirements of the heritage overlay provisions. It is proposed to construct a new detached single-car carport, a secondary basement dwelling unit with a new front-facing entrance, a second floor expansion, as well as a new third floor office addition with a rooftop terrace. In total, I believe there are something like 15 minor variance requests for this application. And what I'd like to hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent today is exactly who told them to come to Committee of Adjustment on this and not file a rezoning application. However, that's later in the discussion. So item 13, we do not have a sworn oath. Is the agent there?
The agent's there and the owner also, we are here.
All right, Mr. Robinson, if you'd like to deal with this, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Mr. Bedard, the owner, yes, I do.
I do as well. I'm Mr. Robinson.
Okay. All right, thank you. So if we could have the presentation on this request for relief, please. Who is making the presentation on behalf of the applicant?
It's our architect. I think he's on the line, Eugene Mianescu and Robert Martin. If not, we're calling them right now. They might have some technical difficulties.
He doesn't. To me, I see Mr. Mianescu, but his audio is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Mr. Martin, yes, I can.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Robert Martin, architect, here on behalf of the applicants whom you've just spoken with.
Okay.
So this is a very interesting file for us, and perhaps for you too. It's quite a unique building, something like 130 years old. It was originally intended to be part of a row house development. You can see the exposed masonry chimneys in the left image. And the property had some renovations in the 1980s, which expanded to the south, but it's largely been left as is over the years. I know in your introductory comments, you flagged the number of variances. I know at first that seems surprising or alarming, but most of the variances that we are asking for are largely to recognize existing non-conforming situations. So there is a component of those. The proposal involves variances to permit the complete renovation of the house, the introduction of a new secondary unit in the basement and a carport to the east. At the south, the previous addition from the 1980s, we're looking to build on that existing footprint to sort of regularize the volume. And for our client, the introduction of a new third-story office. I should say I participated in the city's I guess, peer review of the new conservation district. And for that reason, we reached out to City Heritage staff to talk about our plans for this project. And I think it's safe to say they have no concerns and in fact welcome the reinvestment in the building. We spent a lot of time looking at massing of the building and viewscapes to locate the addition. And in the case of the third story addition, the image to the left illustrates that from the public realm, the addition is largely invisible and very set back from the existing primary sort of heritage characteristics. So I think we can maybe just run through some of the other images and.
Well, actually, what we need you to do is go through these variances one by one and explain to us which ones reflect an existing condition and which ones don't, or a non-conforming right, and which ones don't.
Sure. So, I beg your pardon?
So make your presentation with the visuals, and then we can get down to the nitty-gritty of the variances.
Sure. Okay. So the well, I have the primary, sort of list of reliefs requested, so we could use those. The first one has to do with accessory buildings. So the customary setback from an interior lot line is 1.2 meters, and we're asking for.
Which variance is this on our list?
So this is the first one, T55. The bylaw, it's accessory uses, buildings and structures.
Okay.
So this is to permit the carport structure to the northeast.
So this is variance A?
Yes.
Okay.
The second one also relates to accessory buildings and structures. So the minimum distance from the main building itself is normally required to be 1.2 meters, and we're looking for something more like 26.5 centimeters. The third variance has to do with the height. So the heritage overlay normally requires the addition not to exceed the height of the existing building. In this case, the third floor addition do exceed the existing height of the building.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one has to do with the another heritage overlay provision, which would normally set back the width of the addition. And the idea is that this is really for the existing second floor addition, and we're asking for it to be recognized as the same as the existing ground floor. So this is one that really is kind of recognizing an existing condition.
That's which variance are we on here? D?
It's D. It's the one called heritage overlay. So the bylaw provision is section 60.
No, on the list that we have A through P.
Okay, I might have to get a different form.
That's what we have to work with. So if you want to go through A through P in order, we'd be happy to hear you. Let's just go through them one at a time, shall we? In order. That's because that's what we have.
Sure. Eugene, are you on the call for these, or?
Yeah, I am. I am on the call, so I think a little clarity. So I think, Mr. Chair, it's following the application form. The minors listed in the application form, and we were going through the minor variances listed in the cover letter, because in the cover letter we tried to kind of amass them based on, let's say, the category it applies, as in the form it goes through minor variances and kind of like probably jump from one another, just because it reflects the long process we went with the city to establish all those minor variances.
Okay,
so yes, there are.
But excuse me, just 1 second. We're going to have to make a decision based on A through P, and we're going to be discussing amongst ourselves. This application will obviously be reserved A through P, and determine which ones get approved and which ones may not get approved. So I think it'd be very useful if we went through the list that I have and the other members have in front of us, and
okay,
not the list that you put on your application. Let's go through A through P, shall we?
Okay, so the first one has to do with the front yard setback abutting a street.
Yep.
Okay. So this is essentially recognizing an existing building that in fact is at the lot line.
Okay. All right.
Item B is relates to accessory structures and their distance to an interior lot line.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Variance C.
That's new. That's not.
Sorry?
That's not existing.
That's right. Item C is the distance between, item C is the permitting a new door for a secondary dwelling unit to be added to the front wall.
Yeah.
And, you know, customarily the secondary dwelling unit would not be in a front wall. So that's.
Yeah, understood.
So variance D is talking about this entrance to be in the basement floor.
Yeah.
Whereas customarily would be on the ground floor.
Yeah.
Variance E is talking about the height of a building in an heritage overlay.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the addition exceeds the height of the existing building.
Okay, so that's new. All right.
Item F is asking for the maximum building height to be 11 meters, whereas normally the heritage overlay would be 10 meters. We would note that the underlying zone limit is 11 meters. So in effect, we're meeting the underlying zone limitation of 11 meters.
Problem is the heritage overlay takes precedence.
Right. And then we have, where's the rest of those variances? F, I'm looking at the application here, Eugene.
Yeah, so the additional minor variances requests are at the end of the form, and it says an additional page for minor variance, and they run from G to P.
Okay. So the next item G is again about an accessory structure and its distance to the main building. So customarily 1.2 meters, and we're looking for 0.265 of a meter.
Okay.
Item H relates to an existing condition. So we're talking about the west yard setback of the addition to be the same as that of the existing wall of the building. So.
Yeah. Okay. Understood.
Okay. Item I is talking again about the second floor roof to project into the west side yard as per section 65. So this is again recognizing an existing condition.
Okay.
Item J is talking about decks and stairs to project into the front yard. So this is an existing condition. Both the balcony and stairs are already in the front yard and over the plot line actually.
Okay.
Item K is the balcony projection to 0 meters from the property line. Again, it's an existing condition. Item L is to permit a rooftop terrace. And it's the ratio of the area of the terrace to that floor. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about increasing that area.
Yeah, that's new.
That's new, yeah.
Okay.
Item M is the talking about 0 setbacks from the exterior walls for rooftop terrace. So there's a requirement for a 1.5 meter screening at the exterior sidewall or interior side lot line. So that's new. And item N is requesting to not have to provide the opaque screen facing the side lot line at the east. And largely because of the setback from the edge, the issues of overlook and privacy are addressed anyway. Item O is to reflect the second floor addition having a rear yard setback of 2.24 meters. This is a bit of an odd one because the existing building is already reduced at the rear anyway. But so it's really, that's part of an existing, recognizing the existing footprint at the rear. Item P is a third floor addition to permit it to not be in the rear yard. So this is relating to the heritage overlay.
And that's new.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if you want to show us the visuals, thank you very much for that, by the way.
Okay.
That makes things a lot clearer.
Okay, so if we could just run through the graphics. We have existing Rebel stone foundations and the 1980s addition which is shown at the bottom part. And part of the addition, part of the variances requested are to extend this foundation line upwards to the second story on a portion of it. Okay, next. Okay. So conceptually, this footprint you see here stays exactly the same. There's no changes to the footprint on the lot, but I will draw your attention to the existing stairs and balcony at the top that already project beyond the front lot line. And in fact, the front wall of the building also projects beyond the front lot line. And we have had conversations with city staff, and they're prepared to enter into an encroachment agreement to permit these constructions.
Okay.
Okay, next. So the arrangement of the second floor for 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, retention of the existing heritage balcony and all its features. So again, the variances that we talked about are the southwest to extend the southwest bedroom to align with the existing wall on the floor below.
Okay.
Okay. So these are all existing. I guess we'll just go through now to the yeah. So here we have we'll run through the existing elevations. Quite beautiful masonry detailing. This sort of unusual exposed chimney flue structures on the east elevation, and you can see part of that addition from the 1980s at the left side. Okay, next. So our west elevation, the existing porch, and that portion of the addition at the right side, this existing vinyl sided addition that's in not particularly good shape, and we're looking to extend that upwards. Okay, next.
Okay.
The existing rear arrangement of brick and vinyl at the rear. Okay, now we'll go to the new. I guess again, this is the existing front elevation. So it's a very handsome heritage building. It has been allowed to deteriorate, but it's got very beautiful features, and we're looking to respect all of that. Okay. Next, so now under the proposed site plan, we have the carport structure to the east, and it actually shields the garbage enclosure and the stairs that go up to a series of decks and existing entrance into the dining room.
Mm-hmm.
The lower level unit, its arrangement will be between, I guess the ground floor will partly be, or this basement level will be between the new tenant and the upper floor for their mechanical and storage. Okay, next floor. So open concept plan for living, family, kitchen, dining. Again, retention of all the porch and balcony features at the northwest. Okay. And second floor layout of bedrooms. So I mentioned earlier the slight expansion of the bedroom to the south over the existing wall to permit the laundry and bathroom arrangements. It's actually not, even though it appears quite large, there's not a lot of space within the existing structure. Okay, next floor. So our client is a doctor who does a lot of work and research at home, and so she's looking for an office at the upper floor with a roof terrace. We modeled a number of options, and the optimal design is to actually recess this office into the roof structure to reduce its height, and also provide natural screening from the north, west, and east sides. It also helps in terms of the view simulations for placement here. Okay, next. So these next elevations, of course, you're seeing full frontal, which will make the upper floor addition more prominent, but that's the way elevations are shown. You can see it's set back at the side there. Okay. Next. So this is the south elevation with the arrangement of siding and increased or different glazing pattern to the existing. Next. And so the easterly addition, you can see the new exterior cladding for the rear addition and the third floor projection and the new carport in the front, in the foreground. Okay, next. and the side. Again, this addition roughly aligns with the part of the balcony. So there's a kind of visual harmony there. And then the coming images, we've done a few view simulations to show you, I guess on the left, the existing and the proposed, and on the right, the existing and the proposed to communicate the massing arrangements. So is that covered it all, Eugene? Any other comments?
No.
No.
That would be all.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I realize this in my career certainly is the most number of variances we've ever requested. But I think it is quite an unusual situation in terms of the existing building. It sits in a mature heritage neighborhood, and the existing building has a number of features and characteristics that do trigger variances. So there's been an extensive process working with city staff to, I guess, recognize the minutiae of all these and make sure that we're covered in every case. At this point, I would welcome questions and comments from members of committee.
Wilder.
We do have letters of support, I should say, too, from neighbors as well.
What is the total? You're saying that the interior of the house is very small. What is the? Looks like a large house. What is the total square footage at the moment of the house?
Eugene, do you have that handy?
I don't have it in hand, but I think I would say it's about 100 square meters.
1,000 square feet. So are you telling me that there is no room right now to accommodate? I appreciate that the doctor works at home and needs privacy, but is there no other way to accommodate an office? Is there the basement unit that's being created? I guess that wouldn't be conducive to having an office at the lower level with windows, as opposed to putting an office up on the third floor?
So we have a young professional couple who are looking to have children. So there's a 3-bedroom arrangement on the second floor is what's needed for their needs. They also have immediate family members they're looking to live with them at some point too. So that's what the basement suite is intended for. And we could extend further out over the existing dining area, but it then blocks light to those bedrooms. So we did study a number of options, and what's proposed is seen to be the best, judging all criteria.
The other question, the rear yard, how much of it? I didn't see any photos of what the rear yard is at the moment. How large a rear yard is there right now?
It's about 8 feet rear yard to an interior lot, which itself, I guess it's a very comfortable relationship because the lots that abut it actually are from a different street. So you're actually looking to their backyard, and there's no likelihood of building close to each other.
I see. There was a comment made that if the third floor was to be approved, to continue the roof line up on the front of the third floor with no front windows. I guess there was concern by an individual who felt this was not, in fact, consistent with the heritage look of the building and what else there is on the street at the moment, which, there obviously are some very nice heritage buildings as well further up the street. I don't know what your comment is on that.
So I spoke with, up until this morning, we had just letters of support for the project, and then there were two neighbors who had some additional concerns, and so both the owner and I got to speak with them today. And I think in the first instance, there was a misunderstanding about the visibility of this front wall from the streets. As our images demonstrate, it's largely invisible from the front street. And it's important for our client to have that sort of north light and some sense of urban city view. So, this is a very discreet addition. It's not going to be visible in the streetscape. But I would say, by way of explanation, our firm is probably one of the most established heritage conservation firms in the city, and we do a lot of work on existing heritage buildings and additions to them. And one of the typical criteria or watchwords for additions to heritage buildings, there's the 3 criteria. They need to be compatible with, subordinate to, and distinguishable from. And so we're not looking for a kind of Disney or historicist replication of the existing building. It's okay that the addition can be of its own time and of contemporary expression, but done in a sympathetic way. So, you know, we hear what the neighbor has said, but we feel we've addressed those concerns.
And you're going to have a rooftop terrace.
Right.
And, you know, I appreciate that it's set back and all, and so there's the issue of the opaque screening. But do you need the balcony and the rooftop terrace?
Well, it's the same thing. It's the balcony is at the front. It's this a little almost a kind of folly or delight that's from the original construction. But the rooftop terrace is really, I think, what you're referring to. Yeah. I can't hear you.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Sorry, here it's Jonathan Bedard, the owner, with Mary Eve Robinson. We talked with Eric. I think maybe the email didn't come into the city in time. He did address the first problem he had, and in the last email he sent to the city, which he copied me on, he actually supports the project, talks about the windows again. He's like, yeah, if you guys are doing windows, but still keeping the heritage look of the house. So we did mention that with him, and at the end, I think we came to a consensus, but I don't think the email actually reached in time to be in front of the committee.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Wildman, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. It's a bit of a peculiar comment again from Forestry Services on a city tree that may be impacted due to proposed construction. Can somebody elaborate on that for me?
There's an existing mature tree in the northerly front yard. The northwest corner of the Rebelstone foundation is experiencing some structural distress. So, you know, some recent excavations have, I guess, been undertaken to begin to repair that. I think our owner is certainly fond of this tree and looking to maintain vegetation in the front yard. So certainly an arborist can be retained to provide input, but I think, you know, realistically, the tree, you know, is at risk. And if that's the case, then there will be, I would say, compensatory planting in the front yard to continue to contribute to the streetscape.
Does planning staff have anything to add? It's a bit of an odd statement from Forestry Services. Normally they'll say something like what you just said, that, you know, constructive measures need to be put into place. Or some sort of other measures to replace if it's damaged. It just says it may be impacted, and I'm curious if staff has had any discussions with Forestry Services.
Through you, Mr. Chair, unfortunately, there was I wasn't able to have a further discussion or to speak with Forestry to have a better, a more detailed comment regarding this tree. I do recognize it's an interesting comment that it just says it may be impacted, but there's nothing to the effect of how to mitigate that.
Okay, thank you. Disappointing, I guess, but we got to roll with that. At some point, Mr. Chair, I think it's really important to have the 4 tests discussed today, particularly with respect to the what constitutes minor.
The words are out of my mouth, Mr. Wildman. That was my next question. Mr. Martin.
Sure. So the first test again is, does it meet the general intent and purpose of the official plan? And this area is certainly in the general urban area and worthy of intensification goals. So by appropriately renovating the existing building and introducing a new secondary basement dwelling, we do maintain the general intent and purpose of the OP. And again, the policy 5 talks about intensification that complements existing patterns and scales of development and planned functions. So all of this is consistent with semi-detached and ground-oriented housing. So we feel we meet that test. Test 2, does the proposal maintain the general intent and purpose of the bylaw? So we're in an R4 zone, which certainly can permit much higher density and numbers of units. So this also again speaks to intensification, and I think we're compliant with that. Item 3 has to do with desirable and appropriate. In this sense, we're not increasing the building footprint. The additions are primarily in the rear or not visible from the street. And we're really, I guess, building on existing foundations as well. It also improves some of the, I guess, shelter for vehicles and garbage storage and so forth. So that's all desirable as well. I think also too, consistent with the city's investment in the Heritage Conservation District, by approving this project, it's sending a message that owners can, it sort of encourages investment and maintenance of heritage character and elements in the building. So that's very positive as well. And the last test has to do with it being minor. We've spent extensive time massing and modeling and coordinating with city staff to locate additions in a way that we don't detract from the heritage character and affect the residential streetscape. In this sense, we feel we meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and request your approval as it continues to meet the intentions of the City of Ottawa zoning bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any further comments from the members of committee? Ms. Oak-Charon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope I didn't miss it when the images were going up, but I wanted to come back to the rooftop terrace and the image where we could see the office from the frontal view. Just wondering, do the windows wrap around the other sides? In other words, could the windows face in a different direction than having the windows face north? Maybe I missed it, but wanted to confirm that.
So we studied a number of options for the placement of the office, and what makes the most sense from an efficiency point of view is to stack the circulation so the existing stair winds up to the 3rd floor as well. And what that does is, you could have some limited light through the stairwell, but we want to maintain privacy on the west side, so we don't have windows there. On the west, we have the stairwell, and that really limits our locations for glazing to the east out onto the terrace, and to the north towards the cityscape. And for some people who are working computers too, north light is also desirable. It has less glare. It's a very even soft light as well. So for a whole host of functional reasons, the placement of the glazing primarily at the north and east is what works for this scheme.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a comment or question? All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. As I said, we're going to reserve on this application, and you will get our decision in 10 days. Thanks very much.
Many thanks, Chair and members of the committee.
All right. And
Thank you.
With that, we have concluded